The Hintzville house, the place. Even the police fled. From in the summer of 1987, in the state of Michigan, USA, a family named Edwards decided to move from the crowded city of Detroit to a quiet suburb called Hintzville. They found a large old house at the end of a dirt road. Its wooden exterior was decayed. The garden was full of tall trees, and there was a strange silence around it. The price of the house was unusually low, but the realtor only said that the previous owners had left for certain reasons. The Edwards family didn't care. They were looking for a new beginning. The first night, everything seemed calm, until around 2 a.m, the little daughter of the family, Emily, woke up screaming. She was crying and said that a man had spoken to her from inside the wall and told her they must leave this house. Her father, Daniel, took it as a joke and thought she had a nightmare. But when he touched the wall next to her bed, it was cold and damp, as if a cold wind was blowing from behind it. The next morning, Daniel went out to tidy up the garden. In the middle of the yard, a patch of ground with a darker color than the rest caught his attention. He felt that someone had recently dug that part and covered it again with soil. He struck it a few times with a shovel, and something white came out from under the dirt. It was a human bone. Terrified, he called the police. The officer said it might belong to old times. But a few days later, the results of the investigation were announced. The bones belonged to a woman who had been killed around the year 1979. That night, Emily screamed again. Her mother went to her room. Emily, with terrified eyes, said she had seen a woman in white come out of the wall and tell her, "I'm still here." Her father tried to calm her down, but when he returned to his room, he heard footsteps from the basement. He went down, but no one was there. The next morning, Emily's mother called the police and said that the previous night, the sound of chains and footsteps had been coming from the basement. The police entered the house for inspection, but in the basement, they saw a scene that never left their minds for years. On the walls, written with a substance similar to dried blood, there were sentences like, "I'm still here. He buried me, but he couldn't silence me." One of the officers reported that while inspecting, he heard a scream from the basement that had no logical explanation, a loud, muffled, inhuman scream. That night, the house was closed off as a crime scene. But 3 nights later, the neighbors again heard the sounds of chains and screams coming from inside the house. When the officers returned, the doors of the house were open, and on the wall near the entrance, written in red paint, were the words, "I am alive." In the following years, many journalists and documentary makers went after the house. One of them, a woman named Karen Mice, decided in 1999 to make a documentary about this place. She and her team entered the house and stayed there for 2 nights. On the 3rd day, there was no news from any of them. When the police went to investigate, only the filming equipment was left on the floor. In the last recorded frame, Karen was standing in front of a mirror in the basement, and in the reflection of the mirror, another woman's face could be seen standing right behind her. But in the actual image, no one was there. In 2004, the house suddenly caught fire. one was around it, and the source of the fire was never identified. Witnesses said the flames were rising from the ground, not from the roof. When the fire was extinguished, the only thing left was a rusted metal door leading to the basement. When the firefighters opened it, a strong smell of sulfur and smoke rose into the air. On the ground, written with black charcoal, was the sentence, "This is only the beginning." Since then, no one has dared to build a house on that land again. But in 2016, a family began to build a house on the neighboring land. In the very first week, the young son of the family said that at night he heard a voice from the basement calling his name and saying, "Go back to my land." The family's dog howled every night and barked at a specific spot in the yard. 3 days later, the dog disappeared and its body was found exactly at that spot where the Hinceville house had once stood. The police never found any explanation. But the local people still say that every time it rains, the sound of chains and screams rises from underground. Truck drivers who pass that road at night say they have seen a woman in white standing in the fog, looking toward the road. But when they get closer, she disappears. One of the old officers who took part in the first investigation later said in an interview, "That house wasn't cursed. The house itself was alive. Whoever entered it became part of it." Today, there is no trace of that house on public maps. But those who have passed the old Hinceville Road say that at a certain point along the route, the GPS stops working for a few seconds. At that very moment, if you look to the left, you can see the shadow of a burned house, and a faint light rises from its basement. They say that light is still searching for someone to hear its words.